And there we are. Hello.
Hi Sam, how are you today?
Oh, good. I need to turn the mute down on my laptop that I can see the stream because I'm hearing my own voice 30 seconds later, which is really off-putting. I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good.
It seems a while since
Thank
we've
you.
done a stream together. We've both been on holiday, haven't we? So,
Yeah, so finally, a couple of weeks later. So welcome everyone. What are we gonna do today, Sam?
So we're going to have a look at it's not really low code today. We're actually going to write some real code, but we're going to build a Node-RED package or a node for Node-RED. So we're going to do some HTML and JavaScript. So kind of low code, but just show you what you can do if you want to create your own custom nodes or something. It's not a lot. It's not a lot more complicated than building a web page. I think it's the nodes themselves are little web. Well, they're an HTML and a JavaScript file. The HTML is just like building web pages. The JavaScript stuff is all quite templated. So I think you're going to drive, aren't you? And I'll guide you through it. So what we're going to use. Have you got that docs page up? Actually, should we switch to your?
Yes.
Your screen. So on the Node-RED documentation site, there's a really good bit on creating nodes, and particularly this. So there's a reference of all the different things you can set, but there's this little guide for creating your first node and your first package. So I think we'll work through that, and we'll use that as our sort of template. The node it talks about creating here is one that calls lowercase, which takes in a string of text and turns it into lowercase. But it's a very simple kind of almost hello world, and I tend to almost use this bit as my starting out template and just delete bits and change things. So it's kind of a scaffold from there. So yeah, this is it. So I think we're going to work in VS Code on your machine. I should probably switch my thing so I can see your screen on here.
Yes. Cool. So
there we go. So what we've got to start with, I guess, is we're starting just with you've got Node-RED installed on your machine, just as a
yes, I do.
Standard sort of empty build, doesn't have nothing special there. And you've got your editor of choice, VS Code. I think you created a project folder, but that was about it, wasn't it?
Yes, I did.
Cool.
And then I went ahead and did npm init and stopped there.
Okay.
So at this point, I think I will have to name my package, which I believe is usually Node-RED contrib, and then what the package does.
Yeah. So it's kind of a convention. You can call it absolutely anything you like, but Node-RED leverages npm anyway to sort of all the packages are just npm packages, and there's some stuff we'll look at later on how you make it a Node-RED package. So yeah, you obviously need npm installed. I think if you've got Node-RED, you've probably got npm installed anyway. So npm is the node package manager, and then they use a convention naming of Node-RED hyphen contrib. Contrib for the contribution ones. So the official ones are Node-RED hyphen input or something for like one of the official ones, and third-party ones have that contrib tag in them. But technically, it'll work with absolutely anything. So yeah, we'll call it Node-RED contrib sample node. It's good. Yeah, our version. These are just the prompts. So yeah, sample. There's nothing specific, I don't think. Yeah, that doesn't really matter. So yeah, you can leave it as index. Return. It's fine. We're not going to bother with testing, and we're not going to bother with pushing to Git for this. So this is oh, I was going to say keywords are important. We can go back and edit that. But the key thing, well, if you want it to appear in the Node-RED palette published in the catalog, then you need to add the Node-RED keyword, because it won't pick it up out of npm, I don't believe, without the Node-RED keyword still. But again, it'll work for development, but for publishing, you need that keyword in there.
Do I carry on? And
yeah, we can. Or... Yeah, we can edit this as the JSON. So that's only when you come to publish. You can do all the testing and things, but it seems to be quite a common pitfall people make on the forums. It's like, I've written a node and I've published it. Why isn't it showing up? And one of the things is if you haven't put the Node-RED keyword in. I'm trying to remember if it still needs it, or they did change from automatically picking up changes to you have to go in and now like manually request it re-indexed it. But yeah. So if we scroll down a little bit, actually, we can.
In the guide, yeah, I was just pulling it up to see where these actually show up once.
Oh yeah, that's
finishes it.
If you scroll down and look at what it talks about for the package JSON, it should have generated that. I think it'll mention the keywords. It doesn't seem to mention keywords. So the other thing we need to add though is we need to add a section to our NPM, which is the Node-RED section. If you copy and paste that little bit, if you scroll back up to
package,
yeah. If you grab the Node-RED bit from there, actually, can you copy and paste that? I think it's not an image, is it?
Hopefully, yeah.
Cool. So we only really want
only the
node, just that bit, yeah.
Okay.
This is the extra
just
stuff.
To check that I finished this one.
Oh, yep. Yeah. That's fine. Okay, so if we open this slot up in NPM, I think your terminal window is just scrolling off the bottom of the screen. If you want to bring it up a bit, maybe make it
this is one I said that I zoomed in, but it didn't exactly zoom. It just made the window bigger.
If you go to View in the menu at the top, there should be Make Text Bigger or something in the top. Defaults on size bigger. Yeah, it's bigger there. That'll.
The whole thing gets bigger.
Yeah, it'll keep going a few times. It'll get bigger a little bit, and then you should be able to resize the window. Yeah, that is getting bigger.
Well.
There we go.
Okay.
Cool. So if we open that with VS Code, do you have the code dot installed, or do you need to? Command.
I'm gonna.
Yeah, you can add. I think it's an add-on VS Code. You type code space dot.
I have not tried it in a while.
It opens that folder in VS Code. It's really handy. Or it opens VS Code.
Yes, it does.
Oh, there we go.
And here we go.
Sample node. Hang on.
Which is
you did the npm init in 1.2 high. You did the npm init in your root folder rather than in the sample node folder. So you created the folder and you forgot to go into it. If you look at where you are, if you do pwd, yeah, I do it all the time. So yeah.
Okay. So
let's redo the npm. So cd sample code. Right, now let's do an npm init. Which also explains why it's trying to call it next mode, because that's the name of the folder.
Right, version. Description.
Sample. Yeah.
Should have been sample.
The only one to add is the keyword.
And the keyword.
Let's stick Node-RED in there. I think it's all one.
Is that with a dash or
I'm just trying to remember that. I think it's without. Just gonna look at one of my ngok package. Package.json. Keywords. Oh no, it is node-red. My mistake. Never mind. We can edit it. There we go. That's better.
There we
So if we change our keyword to put the hyphen in, firstly. Again, you probably want to do make that a little bit bigger.
Oops.
There we go. Oh, a bit bigger again. There you were.
Yes, and then we wanted to add the the Node.js section,
Yeah.
right?
Do you want to make the font a bit bigger on that one as well? I think it's probably the same command plus.
Still bigger?
Yeah, I think so. Just looking at this on the window, it's a little bit.
That should be fine, right?
Yeah, I can see that, but I think I can know what I'm looking at. If you can't see that, I suppose it looks okay on my yeah, on my little 12-inch surface here. So yeah, that's good. Okay, yeah, we've done the comment. So we're going to drop that Node-RED section in just after license as well.
Under the license. Yep.
So you actually remember to put the comma in.
Then,
I always forget that. And we're gonna.
Sorry.
You remember to put the comma in when you add something to the end of a JSON file. I always forget, and then wonder why stuff doesn't work.
I'm guessing we're naming the lowercase, right?
Yes. So yeah, we'll call ours sample node. Fine. So this is just what they call them in the. This is what they're called in the palette when you list the nodes. That's the name of which file to look in. The value that goes in there. So you can create like a package that has multiple nodes all in multiple files, and you just have to add each file into that list there, or whatever. So that's our package JSON. We're going to create our JavaScript file. So we'll grab that chunk from there.
So we have a JavaScript file and an HTML. So why is that? Why do we need two files?
Yep. So
to add the node?
The JavaScript file. So you know how Node-RED has the editor and it has the runtime, the backend piece, if you like. Basically, the JavaScript file, the JS file, is what runs in the runtime, and the HTML file is what is presented in the editor. So one is to deal with how the node. Basically, one deals with how the node handles a message going through it when it's actually running, and the other one is how you edit it. It's a bit odd because you end up often writing JavaScript in the HTML file as well, but that's the JavaScript that runs in the browser when you're doing things with your editor, whereas this is what the actual node does on input. So if we look at this, so what we have, it's a bit asked about face, but you've got line 10 down there, you've got the red nodes register type. That's where we're declaring the name of the type of the node that we're calling it, and the next, so in that lower hyphen case, yeah, we'll call it sample node. And the next to it is then the function that we call. So we can just call that sample. And you can see a sort of convention of snake case, uppercase, lowercase. It doesn't have to be. These are all just conventions for how Node-RED is structured. So you tend to use the same name and things. So now we're going to rename so that basically registers. This is the function to call for this node. So now we're going to edit the function, and that's going to be called sample node.
So this is going to be our sample node.
Yeah, sample node. And then what happens is when that node is, so this function is then run every time an instance of this node is deployed. So when you hit deploy, or when Node-RED starts up, it pulls it out the config and runs this function to like create each node in the runtime. So this function, if you've got like 4 copies of the node, this function would run 4 times because it's run on for each instance of the node. So the initial stuff is basically just says create a node, referencing this with the config object. The config object is what's passed into it from the flows file, or which we've edited with the editor. So we create our config as to what the thing looks like. I really do not want to update Windows right now, thank you. They really do choose the best times, Microsoft. So yeah, we run that function, we declare node, and then what we also then have is we have an event handler called node. So node is just this object that says when an input event is sent to us, then we execute a different function. So the whole function runs when the node is instantiated, when it's created, either by deploy or by starting up. And the on input event is called when a message arrives into the node. So the on input is the actual processing bit. And there are a few other times we can do things like when a node is removed as well. If for example, you might need to clean stuff up, there's a node on, I can't remember what it is, node on delete, I think, or node on I think it's node on close actually, that runs when a node is removed from the palette as well and stuff. If you just want to like delete config or something. So the on input is pretty simple. That function takes the message, which is the incoming message, into the node as an object, lets you do things with the message object. So in this case, we're taking the payload, which is our common value, and we're converting it into lowercase. So that's a JavaScript function which says, take whatever this string is and make all the letters lowercase. So we'll leave that as it is.
Shall we leave it as that?
Let's leave it as it is, I think, for a minute, because it's quite a good test. And then the final thing we do there as well is we say node send out the message. So we've changed the message, and then you always have to do at the end of it the node.send function, which tells it to output it. And you can do clever things.
So this is your return.
Yeah. This is basically the equivalent of like returning in a function. So you need to send something out from a node for it to move on to the next node. And there are various things you can do kind of with the send. You can, because you may actually want to send multiple messages. So you could put node send message in twice, and it would send 2 copies of the message. So you could make a 1 in 2, a duplicator node or something, which would.
Right.
So node send can be called multiple times. In fact, let's add in another. Let's do that change. So let's duplicate line 7 and chuck another node send in the bottom there. I think this will work. Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to convert it to lowercase, and we're going to send it out twice, just to look a bit odd. Okay, so that will do for our JavaScript file. So we'll just make sure that's saved. We now want to go back and do our HTML file. So if we grab the sample for that, there we go. And there's probably more to the HTML file in this one. And, it often turns out the HTML file seems to be the harder one to write.
Having spent some time with the look and feel of the node that we have, yes, that is the harder part.
It's certainly a lot more wording. Right, so what we've got in here is a few different sections, and they're all inside the script. If we start from the bottom, actually, that's probably a good.
Sorry. Bottom.
Yeah. So you see how you've got these data help name, So we've got there's 3 sections to the HTML file. There's the data help name section of the script, which is what appears in that little help. Have you got Node-RED running actually?
I haven't locally, but I can quickly open up a hosted version for that.
It's probably useful that we look at different bits of the editor.
Should I just open the local one and then, yes?
Yeah, well, yeah, just start.
Let's start the local one. So we don't usually do this, but you can start locally Node-RED by using the command Node-RED. And then this is where you're going to find your editor. That is port 1880.
There we go.
Right. And we were going to look at the info section, yes.
Yes. The info, yes, the help section. Yeah.
So
In fact, if you drag in a,
for example,
talk, no, that'll do.
Node help.
Yeah, node help, that's it. And then, yeah, bring up one of the nodes. This is, yeah, that'll do. Just drop it in anything. You'll see that little bit there at the bottom now. So that little window there, the information that appears in there is what goes in that help topic. And really that's HTML. So you can use bullet points, paragraph tags, just like you're writing kind of your classic HTML documentation. You can put links in. I've never tried to do anything particularly clever, but I guess you could run JavaScript in there if you really wanted to, something, and make it dynamic. I don't know how that would work, but you could, yeah. Typically, there's some little conventions like inputs, outputs. It expects to see a what the node expects as an input, what the node outputs, and where it outputs it, and then details like a description. And we put a link to the Nexmo documentation in there for each of our nodes as well. But if we look at a different one, look at non-Nexmo one, like a Google Sheets or something. So I find I probably didn't write anything for the Google Sheets one. Just above it, up top.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So I did a fairly simple one there, but input output, describing what it does. Writing the help is not my forte. If you look at half the stuff I've created, it's always listed as the to do. Write a help section for it.
I tend to look at the inject nodes or debug. But yeah, their default ones look quite similar.
Again, there's lots of stuff in the design of Node-RED when you're building nodes, which is sort of conventions that just make it easier for somebody to use, because as long as all the nodes behave in a similar way, and a lot of it is, there's quite a lot of stuff is more a convention than a must do, but it makes life easier if you just find an existing one. So if you're ever not sure about what you're to put somewhere, just look at one of the built-in nodes and see how they've done that, and then sort of translate it to yours. Cool. So that, if we go back to our VS Code. HTML, there we go. So that's our help section. So this one just has a simple P paragraph tag. It's a little bit odd if you're an HTML person, because they're all in script tags with this type text HTML, but it is HTML inside script tags. I don't know if that's can you do that in normal web pages? I don't know what a web browser does if it tries to render that, but normally you would do script type
text. Front-end is not necessarily my.
No, I've never wondered if you can actually do valid HTML as a script. Let's try it sometime. Anyway, the next thing we've got going up is the data template name. So this is quite an important one. This block here is our form that we use to configure the node. So when you open up the node, if you go back into Node-RED and drag a node in, that's this little tab here, this properties tab. It's a form usually, or it looks, it has it held up. It's not actually, it's not an HTML form, but it has a whole bunch of input options on there, and that's what we call in that data template name area. And so you can use, drop downs, labels, all that sort of thing. If we look at the code. Yeah. So again, the key thing here to remember is that all of these blocks need to reference the same name of the node. So this is the name which is lowercase here is the data template name for lowercase, the help name for lowercase, the other one I've got the settings. So yeah, let's change these to sample-node as well. Now, our node itself is quite a simple node. We don't actually have any real config to give it. So it might be that if you were going to do like, you're setting up like in the talk node, we set up what you want to say in the voice and things. But in our case, so it doesn't have to, but it's a convention that bare minimum a node will have a configurable parameter of the name. So if you want to rename it to give it a custom name for what my node is, rather than just being called sample node for this instance of the node.
So over here.
So yeah, up the top there, that name field. Again, you don't have to do that, but most of them will have that.
I just realized it's easier to point around if I have.
Cool. So yeah, the name and that little icon next to it is Font Awesome. So Node-RED has Font Awesome built in, which if we look at the code, actually, yeah, look at the code.
Yes, it is. The
class,
FA tag.
Yeah, it's it's just the FA tag. So if you look at Font Awesome 4.7, it shows you like a whole bunch of little iconography you can use to set them. You don't have to do them again. It's just a convention, really. Sometimes it's useful. Sometimes I think it gets a little
just
bit.
leave it open up.
Yeah, it'll load up eventually. So all we're doing here really is we're setting a parameter called name. Now, if we look at what we've got for that, we have this div in there with a class of form row. So that's a Node-RED template styling thing, which is to create each line of your form is a form row div, and then you typically have a label and an input. So our label and what it's for is just so it knows which to associate it with. And then we have that input element. In our case, it's a text element, so simple, type what you want in there. And then the ID, and the ID is quite important, is going to be node-input- whatever we're actually going to call this variable. So in our case, name for this one.
Right.
If we were to create another... Yeah, let's do another one just for funsies. And let's call it count. So it's going to be, we can change the label. Yep.
And input type will be...
Leave it as text for now. Yeah, we'll just make it
right.
Not do anything complicated. Count, and again, the placeholder is just what appears in there before something's typed in on a form. So you can actually write something longer, like how many messages. Just call it something like that in there. Okay, so we've got our two elements we're going to configure for this node. And now if we go up to the last section, you see the regular doesn't have a data template. This is our configuration of the node in terms of in the editor. So we said that this is actually now some JavaScript, not some HTML, but this is just what's used by the editor really for things. The key things in here, so that register type name, again, that needs to match up with the name in your other elements. And that needs to match up with the name that you did in the JavaScript file when you did register node. Yeah, and we'll come back to that one here. If you look in the sample node.js, yeah, that sample node there, those need to match, so it knows how to pair up the files, kind of thing.
So back into the HTML.
Yep.
We've changed the sample node.
Yeah. Category is, if you look in Node-RED, that's where in that list on the side of the palette. There we go.
So if it's function, then it would appear under this, right?
Yep. And you can actually, so there are existing ones like common function, I think it's input and output now, isn't it? Or was it network? No, network, we merged input and output into network.
Common function, network.
Sequence, parser.
Sequence. I quite like this new setup.
Yeah. And then, yeah, but you can see that we've got one called Nexmo. So we actually create our own category. And you can create, so in fact, let's create our own category called sample, just for, and again, it's a little bit like you need to decide what to do. Does this, am I best fitting in with one of the existing ones, or am I building a whole new set of nodes? So I think like the Google Sheets one I did, I can't remember what group I put that in actually. Have you got it installed?
Yes.
It's in function, so maybe it should be storage actually. Thinking about it, ngrok is in a function. Again, maybe that could be network actually. I think I probably just was lazy and put them into function. But I think you can actually change that as a user if you want to. You can edit the categories where stuff appears as well to reorganize it. I've never bothered, but just if you if you click on the node, let's try ngrok and go to. I think you have to go to edit the node. And you see the little one of these appearance. Is it in appearance? No. What's in the settings wheel? That's your parameters. I'm sure there is somewhere you can change. Actually, it wouldn't be that because it would be in a whole. It would be for the palette. There is a way somewhere to move stuff if you really want to. It must be in one of these. Yeah, what's the settings on there? That's
config nodes.
Context. Information. Type. Show more down the bottom there. I'm sure it was a way of doing it, moving it. Only because you can change the icon and stuff in the appearance, but we'll play with that another time. Anyway, so we're going to create our category
of sample.
Sample, yep. The color, again, so that's the color that the node looks in the palette. The background colors. Again, there's some sort of style guides in the docs of the colors to use for Node-RED, but we talk about using muted colors for the sort of standard stuff. I think there's kind of if you're building something that looks like a standard node, try and keep in with the palette. If you're building stuff that's like a completely separate set of outcomes, so we're going to have bright pink, are we? Okay.
I'm pretty sure we're going to notice this one.
Yeah. Actually, I have a node that's like a test one that I use sometimes when I'm playing around with stuff that's bright yellow, so I notice it. So we'll set our color. Okay, so now we get to the defaults. This again is quite important. So this section is those values that we set up in the form. So we've got name already in there, but we're also going to have what we called it count. So we need to add another one to that list. Well, you can.
And value
can be
empty.
Yeah. Actually, to us, you don't have to put any of them. There are various things you can do in there, like advanced stuff. There's even a validation where you can set up like a bit of code that runs to say. So, on the new nodes I was working on, I validate that you put a valid phone number into certain.
Yes.
Fields. That's you can set validate in there and run a function. So you can do some quite interesting stuff. But for now, we'll keep these simple. And just check that we've got them both there. Inputs and outputs are the number of. I asked Nick what this was called the other day, and because I call them nodules and they're not nodules. Ports. That's the number of. So the ports,
yes.
the little bits you connect to. Because I think.
So, for example, if we have a switch node, I believe.
Yeah, so a switch node would have multiple ports if you configure them up. So that one
currently it's one and one.
Yeah, but it'll become now several ports in the output. So it has whatever 7 outputs now. So if your node, and you can do that both dynamically. So what that one will be doing is there'll be some code in that node which is looking at how many you've created and updating that value, or you can like hard code it. So I don't think there's any of our nodes that are hard coded to have multiple outputs, are there?
Don't think so.
They're all single outputs, but some of the new stuff I'm working on we might do that with.
We don't have.
But yeah, typically they only have one output unless they're a switching one. But normally, yeah, you would just set one. If you wanted to, for example, like the
1 or none, right?
Yeah, 1 or 0. So if you wanted to create a node that was either like the timestamp or a webhook in or something like that, you might say it has 0. So an inject node has 0 inputs and 1 output, and a debug node has 1 input and 0 outputs, because you would never connect it to anything else. The button is something else, which is a little more advanced. I just started learning about that this week, actually, about what you can do with buttons and stuff. But so I've got the new create call one, has a button now, so you can click it and create a call just by pressing the button.
Ooh, that's exciting.
It looks a bit odd if you have a button and an input, though. I haven't decided if that's right or wrong yet. And again, I'm now going to add it to ngrok. I might do that this weekend. So ngrok, you can just press a button rather than having to wire up an input of on to it, because that's just silly. So if we go back to our code.
Right, so to recap, this is 1 input, no output. This is
No, other way.
1 input, 1 output. This is
that one's no inputs, 1 output.
no input, 1 output. Yes, 1 input, no output.
Yeah.
And then 1 and 1 and 1 and many. Yeah. Right.
We won't worry too much about
and now for ours,
sending multiple outputs. Sorry, for
this one, we're going to leave it as 1 and 1.
We're going to do a standard 1-to-1. Yeah. The icon is typically a link to a PNG file which is in your package. I think it lives in an icons folder from Brightly, doesn't it? It has to live in. You create a folder called icons and put the file in there if you want to use like a logo, or you can use the Font Awesome stuff, which I think I did.
Which one shall we try?
I'm just looking. Let's use Font Awesome. I'm just going to see. I did it on one of mine. You can use. There are a whole bunch of defaults as well. We'll just leave it as file.png. I think it'll actually is a file icon. So there are a whole bunch of built-ins there anyway.
Great.
And yeah, label. This is just what is the label when it's on the canvas, what it's called. So that can be 2 things now. Yeah. So on there, like ngrok or message.payload or switch. So you can, and also by default, it's how it appears in the palette as well. But what you can do is you can create an additional value of palette label in that file to do.
So which one would be which one? Because I know, for example, the get recording is get recording over there, and once I have it in here, no, not the get recording.
I did change some
call.
of these, possibly. You've got the newer version. I think I cleaned this up when I discovered.
I got the new
label.
version.
It used to be that it was So I think what you were finding for was some of them were get recording was all.
Actually, the inject is the perfect example.
Yeah, that changes slightly, or debug because of what you're debugging. And again, that's like, so that can be the name. If we look at the code for that, you'll see what it does. So what it does is label. It then calls a function which returns the value of this of name. So what you've set, And if that is undefined, so you haven't defined a name, that double pipe symbol means fallback to sample node. So the default name is sample node if you haven't set a custom name, is what that function basically does. But you could make that function do anything you like. You could have it display the time or something the node was created. It wouldn't be very friendly, but so if you look, like the inject one is probably looking at whatever you've chosen for the type of input, timestamp or Boolean or whatever, instead of the name. But and you can do some quite clever sort of stuff there as well.
So if we JavaScript file and the HTML file, do we need anything else, or at this point could we see how it looks in Node-RED?
At this point, I think we have built a basic node. So if we save all of that, we can install it.
Right. So it is saved. And now I should go into wherever my Node-RED is, right?
Yeah, if you open up a terminal.
Yeah. Probably stopping this one.
Yes, you'll want to stop it because we have to. It'll be probably CD. Yeah, if you go to home, just CD. And then cd.node-red. Yep. Okay, and just ls in there. Yes, that's your way your Node-RED
that looks like.
And that's got a node modules folder in there. So we can install with npm directly into there. So all we need to do, so we could install, now you can install, npm install will work from like the npm package repository with a file name, but you can also pass in a path to a package.json or to a folder that contains a package.json, or you can even do it to a GitHub repo. So you can actually npm install from Git, and I can never remember the syntax, which is kind of interesting. So if you want, but for now we're going to do it from a file. So we'll do npm install or npm space install, and what's the path to a /nexmo/sample node, I think, isn't it?
Yes, I believe.
That should do it.
Yes.
Okay, turn. So now we're going to run npm. We'll probably get some warnings because one package added. Whole bunch of other stuff. So now if you restart Node-RED, wherever you were running that, or you can do it from there actually, just like Node-RED. Check we don't get any errors in there. That looks good. So what we should talk a little bit about debugging actually for a second. If you go back to that terminal window, so you can see if we just expand that up a bit, when you start up Node-RED, we've kind of always ignored a lot of what's said here, but it's worth looking at. So we've had a whole bunch of info stuff. It's told us like the versions we're running, a warnings that projects is disabled, and a warnings that you're using default credentials, but you've got no errors there. So what you would find is if you had a typo in your JS file, now you get an invalid JS file, you would get an error there. It wouldn't start. In fact, you can, if you break the JS file, go to sample node.js.
Oh, that's HTML.
Not the HTML, the other one. And yeah, I'll do. If you stop and restart Node-RED, and you don't need to npm install each time, you can just stop and start it. Now start up Node-RED. We should see an error. No, we won't get an error because we haven't deployed the node. Oh, no, we do. Sorry, Node-RED contrib sample node syntax. Oh, so it warns you. Yeah, it warns you that there's an error in that file. I think if you'd actually got a node deployed with that, it would have thrown an error separately. I think that, but you wouldn't be able to deploy it now, I think, because it's not. So if we fix that now, we'll go back. So the key thing to look at is
Right.
There are two places you get errors. One is you'll get errors in that console when you start it up. And if you get the error in the console, that means that there's a typo in your JS file. And that one's usually quite good because it kind of gives you some idea, unexpected token, at least which file to look in. If you've got an error in your HTML file, you won't see anything in that console. You'll only see that in the browser error logs. So you need to use the browser developer tools for that. Cool. So we started that up. If we go and look at our Node-RED,
Right.
and refresh. Oh, and here comes the dog.
Just quickly.
If we look at scroll down,
So we should have
a new section, shouldn't we?
Category.
Be right down the bottom probably because it's.
Yes.
There we go. Sample, and there's our bright pink node. Cool. We're using the little file icon, and you can even see that if you mouse over it, it tells you what the. I think that's comes from the npm description actually, from the package.json, isn't it? A sample node converts.
So this is from the HTML file.
Is it? Okay, yes.
Because it was a simple node and changed it to sample node to see where it.
Yeah.
Does something.
So if we open that up and now and edit that node. We've got our two fields.
So we have name and count.
So what we can do is we can change the name now. Just call it Julia. And hit done. You'll see the name change on the canvas. Leave how many for a minute. There we go. So the name is now picked up that.
Yes.
And we're not doing anything with that how many messages that counts at the moment, so it doesn't really matter. But let's just add an inject and a debug to it.
But if we
and we should see what it's doing.
I'm getting really bad lag.
Yeah, it's a bit.
And I think it keeps following me. Okay. Please don't die.
Oh, of course, I forget you do things. Yeah, we'll just inject a timestamp and add a debug. So we'll just see what our node is then doing. In fact, let's change the inject from being a timestamp, because the lowercase won't do anything on numbers, to just being a word or something. Message.payload. And if you put some capital letters in it.
It's fine up.
Cool. Deploy that and set up for.
We're getting the warnings because of my other flows.
I didn't even see them yet. It's a bit laggy.
The thing is, it's not the streaming. It's laggy on my end.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay, so there's. I wonder if it's the
which I haven't seen before.
That presenter helper. Just turn that off for a minute. Presentify and see if it's.
Right.
So what we should find is, that we inject it, but you see it's now log 2 because we were doing that node send twice. For every one time you send something in, you get 2 out, because we're doing as well as a lowercase.
Let's just do a whole complete message object.
Yeah, you shouldn't see any much difference, but. I think the message will have different IDs.
Is the same? Yeah.
Oh no, the message ID is the same. Okay, yes, because we're not What's the input message ID?
I believe it's the node that emits that debug message.
The ID. Yeah, no, if you just wire up the inject node straight to the debug as well. So just we'll log that. Deploy, clear your history, and that seems less laggy actually.
It still is laggy. So all three
yes,
have the same message ID because this is
because it's generated by the start of that message. The message persists all the way through, so the ID is generated at the start of the flow.
So if we were to add the count in this node, would that add another property to the message that we load?
That would add a.
Or do we have
to do something with it?
else?
So if we go back to our JSON, our JS file. There we go. Right. So let's have a look at. So let's delete line 6 because let's not worry about lowercasing stuff at all. And we need to say, so actually first thing we want to do is do up above the node on, we want to create a new line 5 to add a line in there. And we're going to say var, actually we don't need to do var, sorry, this dot count equals config dot count. So we're going to, I think we might need to make.
Was that a
No, all lowercase. And then what we want to do is we want to, in our input, we're going to change it so that we do a loop. So we need to do a for. Probably easier just to copy and paste this from something.
So in the input to do a loop?
Yeah, in the input. So I just wonder whether count is going to be an int, but so for.
So what do you want this count to do?
So what we're going to do is we're going to do this for the number of times in the count. So for I equals 0. Sorry, and in the brackets. Yeah, cool, we got it. Semicolon I space less than this dot count. Not less than equals to. Less. Oh, yeah, it's not too much. We do want to do less than equals to, don't we? Because we want to go up to the count. And then semicolon after count, semicolon I plus plus. Have I just lost your screen? Are you there, Yulia? I think we just lost you. Oh, brilliant. There we go. We lose Yulia. Let's and I don't even have the code. Let's drop her a message just to see if I don't know what's up with her. So while while we try and get Julia back, let's see if she can. What we have to do? I'm going to have to call. No. Come on, Julia. Always good when the person that's actually doing the streaming, or doing the coding, also has it on there. Okay, Lorna, what's your question? What does the package do? So really, what we're developing is a Hello World package. What the demo sample code that Node-RED gives you takes an input string and turns it into lowercase. We were going to modify this to duplicate the message. So for every message you send in, it spits it out a number of times. I'm not really sure why you want to do that, but you can so it can do a 1 in and 4 out if you tell it or something. So that's what we were just in the middle of writing a for loop to do. And so previously we'd hard coded it to just send it twice. But, come on, Julia. So, or let's see if I don't even have the code, which is very annoying. But yeah, really, I mean, the main thing is we're looking at the structure. So there's a whole bunch of files. Here we go. Yes, you're back.
Hey.
Hello.
Yes. Cool. I'm gonna still need a little bit of time because this is what it looks like when a machine dies, and I'm on another one.
Oh, okay. Does that mean all the code's on that one that's died as well?
Yes. Okay, I'm pretty sure we can redo that in less than 5 minutes.
Yep. I tell you what, you
provided I have Node.js installed on this one.
I was just you carry on and get yourself back, and I was talking to Lorna, explaining to what we're doing. Sorry, Lorna, do you need Node-RED locally to work on a package? Yes, realistically. In theory, you could do it from a Node-RED. Could you? I think actually you obviously you need it to test it. So you could write code completely blind and publish it. But one of the things we were talking about was the way you install the code. So you install it through npm locally into Node-RED, so you can install npm from your file path. To get it onto a hosted Node-RED instance, you'd either need command line access to install it from Git, I guess, from GitHub, or you could, in theory, I suppose, and you'd have to publish to npm, wait for the package to pick up. Basically install it locally is probably the answer. I'm just wondering now whether Node-RED lets you install. I'm pretty sure it doesn't let you install from anywhere other than the public catalog. Manage palette. Unless I've ever missed a hidden option for like specifying a path. No, A to Z. Yeah, I mean it wouldn't show up in your palette search in order to do that. In fact, that's one of the things with the Electron app that we've been playing with as well. That makes it a little bit harder is to install into that. Again, because it's all packaged up with Electron, you can only pull in from the public catalog. So even when I've been building stuff for the Electron one, I tend to install it on a local instance of Node-RED. It makes life a lot easier because you go through an iteration of kind of test something, look at it. It's web development. What you're building when you're building a Node-RED package is you're building a web app or a module of a web app. So it's a bit like saying, could I develop a feature for this web app without having it installed, an instance of the web application installed locally? So yes, you could, but it would take you a long time. I haven't seen any sort of tooling around Node-RED development much yet in terms of like custom linters or anything that validate your Node-RED. One thing actually I will mention. Let's just see if I can share my screen into the chat instead. I'm not sure if I share. There we go. I'll just take over. So when it comes to validating your code, there's a tool called ESPrima, has a syntax validator. This is the validator that Node-RED uses when it starts up and things. So occasionally, if you're getting those errors that say there's something wrong with your code and you can't quite figure out what it is, so VS Code does a reasonable job of highlighting invalid syntax and stuff, but it certainly doesn't pick up everything that Node-RED complains about. Sometimes it's not as easy. So I tend to use this validator just because it's the same one that the Node-RED runtime is validating your code at. So I'd copy and paste my code into there. If I took my JS code from here, and drop that into syntax validator, it tells me it's valid. But if I break something, it also does a really nice thing of telling me where it's broken, which Node-RED doesn't. So it tells me line 72 or something. One of these days, I'll figure out if there's a way to plug this into VS Code. I'm sure there probably is, but I've just not got around to looking for it yet. Yeah, it's a nice validator for finding stuff. And how are we doing, Julia?
So good news is the other machine is kind of alive.
Oh, okay. So you can get the code out of it or something. Probably the quickest.
Yes. The bad news is the other machine doesn't have npm installed.
Can you? No, you've got remote onto that machine. No.
So by sort of kind of alive, I mean it's charging, and it's been charging the whole time, except it went from 100% to 3%.
Oh, okay. So
while streaming.
It's just your battery absolutely fell. Oh, it also sounds like the puppy's waking up. So, yeah, we don't have a quick way of finishing off our code, really. We're just coming up to an hour.
Wait, let me.
So, what else can we look at in some of the nodes that we've got? This is an old version, I think. No, 103, not that old. So let's, I'll just have a look at some of the code for another node that I've previously written. So this is the ngrok node, which is relatively simple. It's a single node package that does a few things. So what we're doing here, this is our, can I make this any bigger? Text only, what's that do? No. There we go. So this is the JavaScript file for the ngrok package. And what we're doing is, so this one uses the ngrok and public node module. And really, we're just wrapping that. So I've still got the create node. I'm setting up a bunch of values that we've configured. So in this case, the node, you tell it the subdomain that you want to use, the region, the auth. This is a little bit interesting. So we didn't really talk about credentials nodes or config nodes, which is typically where you would store credentials. But these are sort of nodes that don't appear in the palettes. They're a special type of node, and they allow you to set up config object, which are then reused by other nodes. So I have one called creds, which is where we put the auth token for Node-RED. You can see more of that in the docs. And then I do a couple of things. So I'm also looking at if there is an auth token set, because actually Node-RED doesn't require you to have an auth token. So that's why I'm only setting if the creds object is null, is not set, then I'm just setting the auth token to be blank. Otherwise, I'm getting it out there. And a few other things, the port. So either I'm using the default Node-RED port, or if you've got one set, then I'm overriding it. Then all we do is then on the input on that one, we are really, this is just the sample code for connecting, which is what we're doing now, so while it's looking at this. So we're connecting to setting up the NGOC connection. The auth, that's where we'll be using that authentication on NGOC. So clean options, if message payload, when then looking at the message, and we tell it to do await ng connect. So that's actually telling it to connect to NGOC. And then we build a new output message which contains the URL that NGOC has connected to. We send that out. And then this little node status function, so we're setting up a node status, so the little icons that appear underneath your nodes, like a green dot or something. I'm just trying to think of I seem to have one set up on here. But that does like a little, in that case, dot. So you can do shape equals dot or circle, I think, so a solid circle or an outline circle that's green and has the text and displayed next to it, in this case the URL. So underneath the node we say what it's connected to, and similarly if it's if payload is off that was sent in, then we disconnect node NGOC there, and we've got the auth node. So that's just some helper functions and things for the NGOC node. And what's in the HTML file? Did we do anything interesting with this node? So again, we're just setting up our values. We've got some, this is where the credentials, this is where I declare this idea of a type field for a config node, to let you use another, like the config node, we say the type is NGOC auth, and there's a node called an NGOC auth node. So that would give you that drop down. Default values that we're setting there. Really, it's quite a simple set node. We've got a few other things. So we've used a few different input types. So we're doing a select menu. Rather than typing it in, we're doing some drop downs. So we can create some menus here. So in this case, we've got an option to choose the region, whether you want US, Europe, Asia Pacific, and the actual values that are then set for it. Again, so lots of drop-down options just to make stuff a bit more user-friendly, really. Some stuff is still typable. A little bit of, we've actually got some functions here. So we're doing some dynamic stuff in the menu. Where is it here? If we do the protocol option, so if you select, depending on if you're selecting HTTP or TCP in this node, we have this on change here. And that will tell it, so this is HTML, so this is JavaScript running in the HTML file to update certain values. So we call this toggle protocol depending on what one you select. And that toggle protocol says if they selected HTML, then HTTP, then we're going to display make a couple of the options visible for like the subdomain and the auth, because those only apply if it's HTTP. Whereas if you selected TCP, subdomain and auth are like invalid in NGOC, so we set the display to none to hide those. So it just makes like a dynamic menu option in there, and that's our help. And then here's our node config for our auth type of node. So you can see there the category. The key thing there is category config to make it not appear in the palette, really. And that's about it. Okay, how are we looking?
Pretty good.
Cool. Do we want
Brewery installed, Node installed, Node-RED installed, and now I'm recovering the file.
Oh wow, okay. You're installing everything from scratch. I know,
I'm
like
sorry about
I
that.
had some
But
real
actually, I'm
technical
really happy that we got to look at that node you created, because I believe it's better to understand when you actually have the functionality in there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's actually like, I've been building some new nodes this week, and I'm still learning stuff of what you can do with creating it. There's a lot of really, especially on that HTML file and things. And it's like building a web page. You can create very dynamic menus. You can validate things. You can do anything you can do in a web page, really. You can bring in external JavaScript files. You've got jQuery. You've got all of that sort of stuff in there. So anybody that's done a bit of web development will find that you can get quite creative with your node configuration. And front end dev is not really my skill set at all. But just looking at what else is in the so the appearance talks about all the different things you can do about the colors and the icons. The HTML file is mostly where you define a node. Here are all the options in the node definition. So again, the category, the properties, the credentials properties. So credentials properties are kind of a special type of property which won't be exported when you do an export of the flows. So that's where you store typically sensitive stuff, maybe kind of site specifics, but definitely anything like usernames and passwords that we're putting into Node should be set as a credentials value. What that means is Node-RED will encrypt those in the credentials file, and it won't export them when the user exports their flow. Inputs, we talked about. Color, we talked about. Palette label was just a clever, different version of the label. You can do various stuff with the labeling. The icon, a line where the text appears. Button is a whole episode almost in how to create buttons. I thought buttons would be really simple, and actually it turns out that buttons are really quite complicated to do. Again, this on edit features prepare, save, cancel, delete. These are functions that can be called when somebody opens up the editor. So you can start to do stuff to like make your if you're doing kind of more advanced formatting and things, you might need to add code JavaScript in there. Same for on edit resize. You can even call on palette add. So what to do when somebody installs the first time they install your node, you can actually add. You can call a JavaScript function to do something there. I can't think what you'd want to do there for that though. Like maybe I don't know. Maybe the first time somebody installs your package, like you want to prompt them to go and sign up. Hey, maybe you could add a coupon code in there when you install the Node-RED, the Nexmo package into Node-RED. We put a pop-up message in Node-RED that says, "Here's a coupon code." That'd be quite cool.
Actually, that would be really useful.
Yeah, I guess it's just maintaining that coupon code from somewhere.
Oh yes, pushing it every time.
Yeah, you could make an external call to an API to get one, I suppose, or do some tracking even. Oh, you could actually do an interesting.
Right.
Yeah, I have to think about that.
So I believe I'm ready to install.
Okay, let's switch back to your screen then. Hang on, I will stop sharing if you want to reshare your screen. Okay. Yep.
How's that?
Yep, that looks good. Cool. So where are we? We're on the new machine now, aren't we? Have you installed this node into Node-RED or not?
Not yet.
Okay. Let's finish editing it first, and then we'll install it. So we were doing that for loop just before we died, weren't we?
Yes, we were. That was in here.
Yeah. Line 7. Yeah. So for I0, I is less than count. After count, we want semicolon I plus plus to increment. And then open up a semicolon prayer.
Semicolon?
So not a semicolon, curly brackets. Very hard to talk kind of code to people because like
is difficult.
There we go. And
So
inside,
we went to
yeah. So what we're going to do is, I think we'll do two things. So we're going to let's set a property on the message. Count is so. Let's set message.count equals I. So we know which index, like in and we'll do node send message in there as well. And after that, yeah, in there
here.
we'll send inside the for loop. So all we're going to do is, and we'll delete those other two node sends out of there. Well, it's getting laggy again. Yep. So yeah, delete the line 11 and 12. Okay, that should be it. So let's save that and install this node now into our Node-RED.
Right.
So cd /dot node-red. Just tab it, should autocomplete from there.
Yeah, that's what I did.
That's because you're in the package. Yeah. Now, so where is that one? Just pwd that. Okay. And cd just to home. Check you've got a cd.node-red in there.
You should. I really did. Come on.
You got Node-RED? Just try running Node-RED. Where did you install Node-RED to on your iMac? Maybe because you haven't run it the first time, it doesn't create the folder.
Oh yes.
Okay, yeah.
I have not done that.
Have you been out of that again? Yeah, it's there. Okay, so quit Node-RED. I think the first you have to run it the first time in order to quit. But now do cd.node-red.
Right.
Yeah, it creates the folder in your home file the first time a user runs Node-RED, of course. Okay, so now we'll do npm install, and then that path we've got at the top there, /nextmode/sample node. Yep, that's added a package. That's fine. Warning you about something like Node-RED.
Right.
So restart Node-RED. Why are you running that? See if we've got our bright pink node down the bottom. Yep, cool. So what we should have now is our sample node should be a configurable duplicator. So let's do an inject and a debug to wrap it with something.
So inject with
it doesn't matter actually because we're not doing the lowercase.
String.
It doesn't matter actually. You can inject. You can inject the timestamp. Injecting timestamp is quite useful because we'll know that we know which which message it is.
Okay.
And our debug.
And do we want a complete message object?
Yeah, because we should also then be able to see our message.count showing us how many times it's gone through. Okay, but we want to configure our sample node. And we want to set the count to 3, something, or 2.
2, 3. Oh, I can zoom in on that, so sorry about that.
Okay, now let's deploy that and see. I'm not sure if this is going to work or not, because if count might be a string, we might need to set it to an. Oh no, it looks like it's count 2, so it's done something.
I'm pretty sure count is a string, and
But it's done. Okay, so but it has incremented. This dot count.
has it?
We'd
Wait.
sent it 3 times, didn't you? You only clicked once, and we got 3 outputs.
But then count is
Yeah, but
2.
0. Remember, it starts from 0. 0, 1, 2. So it'll do it 3 times because we started at 0. If you change count to 1 in the node, these are computers, so computers start counting that.
I'm looking at why
Yeah,
count
I don't know why
2
that's
on all 3
Let's
instances.
just make sure it is actually doing it the right number of times at least, and then we can figure out why our.
Yes, for when it's doing it once.
Oh, why is that hex now? Is it?
I clicked on it.
Okay. I can't see. I can't quite. Hang on. So it's 0, 2. Okay, but it's done it. It's outputted it. So it is doing it the number of times from. In fact, if we set I equals 1 in that JS file. So let's do everything in the JS file. I think our HTML is good.
This is what I was looking at. Aren't we initiating count as a string value?
That's our default. You could just delete the value piece and just make it blank. To be honest, I would just cast it as an integer when it in the JS file and backend to make sure, but I'm lazy.
Oh, yeah.
So let's just change in that line 7. Change I to 1. So we'll start counting at 1.
And then this is going to be equal.
Yeah. So we should do 1 to count. I don't know why that's not. Can we just do a in the above, insert a new line at line 8 to say console log I as well. Console I, and we'll see what it actually does. So save that. Restart Node-RED. This is where it's useful having a big monitor to have all the windows open. Okay, and reload our. Oh, actually, we shouldn't even need to refresh the page, I don't think. But okay, check our debug and just fire that flow off once. See what we get.
Oh yes, once.
Once.
So
Okay.
count is 1.
Yeah. Change our
and it's happening once.
change our count to 3. Yeah,
yes,
but it's doing it 3 times, but it's always outputting the count as 3. Look at our console now for our terminal. See what the. But it is doing it there. So why is that not changing the message value? So I is 3. Let's have a look at our JavaScript. Message.count.
Don't we have to add? No.
Let's just change that parameter. I think we're getting a clash. So change count there to something else.
Maybe.
Message.number. It shouldn't be this.count, config.count.
Was it a this.count and message
That's what I
count
don't. It shouldn't.
kind of
It shouldn't
issue?
do. Because message should be. But I just don't know if. That's what we're gonna prove. Message number equals I node send message. Okay, save that and restart Node-RED. You don't need to reload the browser because we're not changing. We're only changing the JS file. We don't need to reload our web page. We just need to restart our back end basically to pick up those changes. So you should be able to clear and re-inject that. It's still doing number 3. Why is it doing that? Payload's correct, the ID is correct, but the number. But yeah, if you look at our terminal, it's really weird. 1, 2, 3.
I don't. Oh.
That's because we're console logging the value out.
So,
Okay, let's
message
let's
that number.
change after node send. Delete line 8 first.
So isn't that because node.send kind of ends?
No, it does. That's what I mean. It doesn't end because it's doing it multiple times.
It does look
so
through
after
it,
node
but...
set. So delete that line 8. And after node send, let's console log the message object there and see what it thinks it is. I'm really confused. Let's console log the whole message. And run that. It might work. It might just console log object. Look in the console. 1, 2, 3. And yet in our debug, we've got in the browser 3. Why? I do not understand.
So
why when you clicked on it, it was doing something weird with hex. Hex 3. And what's the other one above it? No, the next number. Click on that 3. That makes no sense. I don't know. Answers on a postcard. If anybody knows why that's not working, send me that code. Send me that package, that old node. I want to have a play with that later and try to figure out why it's doing it. But anyway, we've built a node which duplicates messages a configurable number of times, which I have no idea how useful that is or not really. I guess if you wanted to make a really naggy SMS thing, you could wrap this node in an SMS, receive SMS, and sends it on or something. It sends it back to you. For every message you send, it sends you the same message back 5 times, or it sends somebody a message. You could actually have it so that you could have it send a message and it sends a message on to somebody, which is probably against our fair usage policy or our accepted usage policy actually. But you never know. It's I guess it's possibly useful.
Nagging on demand.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to if you're doing a really crude like IoT automation where you've got something that's really really flaky whether it actually does it, and you want to kind of hit a button like 5 times just to make sure, you might use this to kind of go, go on, really do it. Every time I press my button once, I want to fire the actuator 5 times or something. I think actually you can. I don't know if you can do that with the built-in nodes. The split could do it. I don't think it is in the built-in nodes, is it? I can think in sort of, maybe not in like web app stuff, but within in the sequence nodes. So you've got split, join, batch. No, so it's kind of a sequence node, but I don't think so. Split will output. Well, you can use split often to take like an array and send that out as multiple messages. I've done that in stuff before, but I've never duplicated.
Yeah,
the
that's what I
message.
usually do.
Yeah, so maybe it's. I think it probably does have. It probably does have a use for something.
Well, it was definitely useful for having a look into how you actually create one.
Yes.
So thank you for that.
So yeah, that's. I think we'll probably wrap it up there. So let's. Where are we? Let's switch back to the 2 people one. Yeah, I have no idea why that's not appearing. I think it might be a type. I'll play around with that code because it's going to bug me otherwise. So we should also. I can now have got the pop-up thing. Talk about the coupon code. There we go. I can make it appear on the bottom of the screen, which you can't see. But we have a new coupon code for this month or so. I didn't see how long it was valid till actually, but it's probably
Usually a month, but I can
middle of
find
next.
that
Usually
quickly.
it's until just into the beginning of next month, isn't it? So it's probably valid until about the middle of October. SE09VG gives you €10 of API credit to play with Vonage APIs. So if you want to duplicate up the messages and send out lots of messages that time, maybe we should.
Valid until the 14th of
14th
October.
October. Yeah, it's usually the 14th of the following month, isn't it? So that's your coupon code. You can sign up. We do have, I think, in the chat a sign up link, although I think it's going to put Lauren's link up now. But or did we correct that? Next mode up dev, Lauren learns things, so that'll track it against Lauren's one. But we're not that bothered. We'll share the credit with Lauren. That'll take you to the sign up page. What?
Well, that was Node-RED as well. So
yeah. Oh, okay.
only
Yeah.
fair.
So yeah, Lauren's learned. I need to watch that episode. You talked. You were teaching Lauren some Node-RED stuff. Was that you were teaching her just sort of building flows and stuff, or?
Yeah, we were just working through the basics of using Node-RED with our APIs. So send an SMS, receive SMS autoresponder.
Okay.
Just to see how the code snippets translate into Node-RED. She seemed to enjoy it, so.
Oh, that's good. Cool. So yeah, lots of Node-RED.
Quite pleased with
it. And yeah, I think we'll maybe try and finish off that node package and publish it as a Node-RED contrib duplicate. We call it a duplicating node, maybe. Yeah. And put it in the sequence catalog because I'm sure the sequence stuff is always a bit odd in Node-RED. I've often found the sequence handling, the stuff I've wanted to do that's been a bit like I can't quite do that, but I can do it in a function node or something. So maybe it would be useful. You can publish your own Node-RED node then. We'll need to change the color probably from that bright pink so it's more on brand.
Yes.
And
well, I'm looking forward to that.
Did we come up with an idea for next time? Or?
We kind of did. I think today was a little bit further away from low code, so maybe next time we can compensate for that and do a little bit of Scratch, because I remember that the first time you explained Node-RED to me, you said that what Duplo is to Lego, that is Scratch to Node-RED.
Okay, yes, probably. Yeah, my Lego analogies.
So it would probably be interesting to see the difference, because I never actually tried Scratch.
Yeah, I haven't done Scratch for a long time. Looked at Scratch for a long time. Often it always seems to all the demos are always about creating like visual game type stuff, which is not my forte. But yeah, let's have a play with Scratch next time on something. So there's also
next time is in 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yes. So I can't do the maths, but about the 20-something of September, I think 23rd of September. That would be. So yeah, there we go.
Is that the day when clock goes? No, that's usually a weekend.
When what goes?
Time changes.
Oh, the clocks.
From British to...
yeah. Apparently that's October. Summertime changes.
Okay.
Yeah. Late. I think someone said late October. So we'll end up with that funny thing where the US changes 2 weeks before or after us. I'm gonna have to Google that now. UK summertime ends. I think we the beginning of. So yeah, we end on the 25th of October, and I think therefore, US changes 2 weeks before us. US DST changes. I know the US move. Yeah,
So,
sorry, after us. So US changes on the 1st of November, a week after us. So yeah, we got a while yet anyway before the time zones all go to.
I was confused about it. But then definitely in 2 weeks' time at 3 p.m. British Summer Time, and as I've learned, 10 a.m. Eastern Time.
It'll all line up. I think we may actually, because we're 2 weeks, skip the weird offset change as well. But it'll always be at 3 p.m. in the UK, whatever that is, wherever you are. Ask your friendly voice assistant, because that's what I have to use. Mostly use Alexa for as an overgrown world clock to tell me what time it is somewhere. Cool. Right. Well, thanks very much, everyone, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Well,
Bye.
see you.